Right, so Year 10. Sorry I can't be with you this afternoon for the panel discussion on church, why I belong. So we're doing the next best thing, which is creating this YouTube clip this afternoon, which James is very kindly filming, and Chloe is going to be my interrogator and fire the questions at me in a couple of minutes' time. So in the Year 10 unit that you're doing at the moment, which is called Church Challenges and Choices, one of the things that we've asked you to consider and investigate is why would people today choose to be Catholic? So with that in mind, you all have a list of questions which has been run off for you as part of the task sheet for this. Chloe is going to ask those questions of me now, and hopefully seeing I wrote the questions, I might have a few answers about them. A slight disclaimer first. The views that are about to be expressed are my own views about this particular matter, which in many cases will be the views of the Catholic Church, but they may not always be exactly the view. So that would be something you might have to go away and investigate for yourselves. Right, Chloe. Okay, so I'm one of those many people that grew up in a Catholic family. In fact, when I was born, I was born in 1960, at a time when the Church in Australia was still undergoing a very significant expansion. And the parish that I belonged to as a child was actually still in the process of being built. So I actually wasn't baptised in the church, I was actually baptised in the convent. Because back in those days, the parish of Geebung, where I was baptised, the Catholic community had their mass down at the RSL hall, which today is the Geebung Zilmere RSL Club, for those that know the area. So yes, I've always been Catholic.
Which parish do you belong to now?
Okay, today I belong to the parish of the Little Flower, which is at Kedron in Brisbane, run by the Franciscans.
Why is being a part of the church important to you?
That's an interesting one. I think over time the answer to that possibly changes. As I said, I've been lucky in the sense that I wrote these questions, so I've had a bit of a chance to think about them. When I was a teenager, I would say possibly it was important to me for social reasons as much as religious reasons. And what I mean by that, as a teenager, pretty much all my friends were Catholic and went to Mass every week. And going to Mass wasn't just a time to spend time with Jesus, it was actually time to spend time with my friends. And being ruthlessly honest, as a teenager, that was probably one of the main reasons why it was important to me. As I grew older, and especially when I started at university, what I began to realise is that not everyone was Catholic. And for the first time in my life, I came across people that weren't. It was at that stage, so now to about being 18 or 19 years old, you actually had to make a choice, because all of a sudden, being Catholic had some consequences that came with it. And not all your friends back in those days actually appreciated the fact that you were Catholic. They thought you were actually a little bit weird. So the reasons for being Catholics changed, and I suppose after getting married and having a family, being Catholic became important to me because it was something very much that I wanted to then pass on to my children. It's something that I saw as very, very important to my life. And part of the reason for the parish that I belong to is that as a teenager, that was the parish I belonged to. My family had grown up in the Kedron area. In fact, my mother's family had actually housed the first priest in the Kedron parish when the parish first started back in the 1920s. So I feel very strongly connected to that particular parish, and for me it's always been very important. That was long, wasn't it?
Have you ever considered leaving the church?
Yes, on a number of occasions. There have been times in my life, and again I think this is the other reason why I said at the start, this is not necessarily the complete party line in terms of being Catholic. You go through moments in your life where you think, does this all make sense? Particularly when you go through real hardships in your life, and there have been a few of those over the years. In answering the question about leaving, I think one of the things I've always sort of thought is, well, where will I go? To me, whilst there might be particular things that I haven't agreed with over the years, I would never have rejected the idea that there was a God out there somewhere that loved me. And for me, the church has always been the place where I've experienced that.
What is one thing that you really like about being part of the church?
I think one of the things that I really do like about the church is that it, again, takes you outside of yourself. It makes you realise the needs of the people around you. And I think the older I get, the more I become aware of that being part of the church, Jesus is found in the people around you. And for me, it would not make sense to be a Christian and not belong to a Christian community, and in my case, the Catholic community. So what do I particularly like about it? I enjoy liturgy. Not every Mass is necessarily as uplifting as the next one. But it's a time to spend a bit of quiet time with God, trying to think about what's happening in my life and where my life might be going, and what I need to be doing.
What has been your best experience of the church?
Now again, this is a bit funny too, because again I wasn't very young. Undoubtedly World Youth Day, which was held in Sydney in 2008. I was lucky enough to be asked by the seniors from the school that I was teaching at the time, which was St Columban's, to join them as part of their pilgrimage to World Youth Day. And the thing that just absolutely blew me away about that experience was just the variety of Catholics from all over the world. It was just an absolutely mind-blowing experience. It was brilliant. So that one's easy.
What has been your worst experience of the church?
That one, unfortunately, is also easy. And I'm smiling, but I possibly shouldn't be, because it wasn't funny at the time. I grew up a very conservative Catholic, and some would say I still am. Part of being Catholic is that around Christmas time, you're meant to go to reconciliation. I was in London at Christmas time, and at the end of the year I hadn't had a chance to go to reconciliation, or possibly confession as I thought of it back in those days. So I thought I'd go after midnight Mass. With being a good Catholic in London, I found a Catholic church and I found midnight Mass, and I stayed there. It would have been 1 o'clock in the morning, and I went to see the priest after Mass and said, "Look, would you mind hearing my confession?" And his reply was, "You're Australian." And I said, "Yes, but that's not a sin." And he kicked me out because he thought I'd been there begging for money earlier in the day. So that wasn't a real good experience in church.
What is one thing that concerns you about the church today, and why?
I think in Western countries like Australia, the trouble the church has in understanding where people today are coming from in terms of how they express their faith. To me, that's one of the things which is a big concern. I think another concern that I've got is for the church throughout the world in its ability to bring younger people into the church. And it's funny because in countries, or sorry, continents like Africa and Asia, that's not a large problem, but in places like Australia and North America, it really is a critical issue. And I said earlier that, you know, when I was a teenager, I went to church as much for social reasons as religious reasons. In all honesty, if I was a teenager growing up today, I don't know that I would have those social reasons to go.
What do you see as the future of the church, both locally and globally?
Locally, I see possibly a much smaller institutional church into the future. I think the church will still be involved in ministries such as Catholic schools, which we're in at the moment. I think hospitals and aged care are going to be very, very big into the future for the church. Globally, I think the church in especially Africa and South America will eventually become what drives the church into the future. I think Europe will increasingly be less important, although the headquarters will always be in Rome, but it will increasingly become a world church. And we're seeing that with Pope Francis. He's the first person outside of Europe in, I think, over 1,000 years is what I think they're saying. And I think there'll be a lot Francises in the future who come from places like South America and Africa and Asia, because that's where the majority of the Catholics will be.
Is there anything in the church you'd like to see change? If so, what is it and why?
Again, that's the really hard one, and when you ask me that question, I half sort of wish I hadn't written it. I think in countries such as Australia, one of the things that really needs to be looked at is the role of women. And I understand the church's position. The church's position on the role of women is that we have what it calls differentiated roles. So the roles that we have in the church are not always the same. And in the same way as, I'm not a priest, women play a different role again. So I understand where the church comes from in its teaching in relation to that. I suspect, though, that many people in broader society have trouble understanding that, especially in an era where equality of women is something which is taken for granted. So I think in terms of the future, I think that is one of the things the church still has a long way to go on.
I've also got my own question, if you wouldn't mind answering it.
Right, so this is now a question without notice, and I may or may not have an answer.
What is your opinion on things that the church bans, like gay marriage and
Okay, and that's a really good question, because part of the problem the church has, and this is its sort of public image problem, if you like, is that the church is more often known for the things that it's against than the things that it's for. So if you take the example, I think you mentioned gay marriage just a minute ago. The church does not hate gay people, whereas if you look at the way the media portrays that, that's usually the way it comes across. The church actually talks very strongly about the love that God has for people who are gay, and Pope Francis earlier this year or late last year got himself into a bit of strife because he made the same observation. So I think, again, into the future, that's one of the other really difficult ones that the church needs to come to terms with, in terms of how does it respond in a way that does not seem to be judgmental. And I think that's the problem that a number of people have with the church, that people don't necessarily understand the reasons why the church does what the church does. And again, go back to World Youth Day just for a moment in answering that question. When Pope Benedict came out here to celebrate World Youth Day, one of the big problems, which is something which is still very much in the news, was the problem of pedophilia amongst the clergy. And one of the things that reporters said to Pope Benedict when he came here was, are you going to apologise to the victims of sexual abuse? And the Pope said in response to that, I want to seek reconciliation with them. And what he meant by that was, not only was he going to apologise, but he wanted to go beyond that to try and restore the relationship that he and the church had with the people who'd been abused. The problem the reporter had was the only word that they could really understand was apologise. And because the Pope said, well, no, he wasn't going to apologise, he was going to seek reconciliation, it was reported that he wasn't going to apologise, which was not the case at all. And in fact, he did meet a group of victims and had a very powerful meeting with them in Sydney. So I think things like that, but those are the sorts of issues into the future that the church still has a long way to go on. That was a really good question.
Thank you for answering those.
Right. So, for the rest of the afternoon, the next person who will talk to you is our campus minister, Alison. And she will undoubtedly have a different perspective on some of those questions. She's a lot younger than me to begin with. So I wish you well. Feel free to ask Alison any question you might have in relation to this topic about why people do belong to the church today. And I wish you well with your assignment. Good luck. Thank you.